guys, it's ADW, and today we are back programming our Redstone computer. The sun's about to rise and it's really beautiful, and today we're going to be multiplying numbers by each other. Now, first thing I want to say on this is that I'm going to be doing a very brief explanation of how binary multiplication and division works. I have another video that I made. Oh, looks like the sun was setting. Well, that's unfortunate. Anyway, so I have another video on multiplication, division, and floating point numbers in that series where I go over how binary multiplication and division works. So if you want a more in-depth explanation and why exactly the entire thing works, even though I made that video just over 2 years ago and my YouTube commentating skills weren't that good, I just rewatched it and it's actually not that bad. It does explain the stuff, and I'm way too lazy and I don't want to spend time explaining to you guys how exactly that works all over again. It's also kind of freaky because that video now has like over 500 views. Anyway, so let's get back on topic. So, brief overview of how exactly multiplication works in binary. So, the first thing to understand is we're going to do this the exact same way that we do normal multiplication and division. We're going to go digit by digit. We're going to, if we're multiplying the number A by the number B, we're going to multiply the B number by each digit of the A number, or rather bit in this case, because digit, here's another tangent. So digit, if you look at the root there, that's the same dec as is in decimal. So digit refers to one decimal slice or digit or whatever you want to call it, but bit, because it's the same root as binary, is basically just one segment, well, literally one bit. Anyway, let's get back on track. So, that's all that we really need to do to multiply two numbers by each other. We just take B, and for each digit of A, we're going to multiply B by that value. Now, multiplying binary numbers and multiplying binary numbers by bits is actually really simplified by this really simple rule, because if you think about it, binary only has ones and zeros in it, right? So that means that you're either going to be multiplying a number by 1 or 0. And either way, that's a really easy problem to solve. If you're multiplying it by 0, you just don't add the number on. If you're multiplying by 1, then you just add the number on. Now, one thing we have to keep in mind is that we're going to have to keep shifting B upwards as we keep going through this program. This is just making it so that we're multiplying the first bit and by the number by itself, and then we're multiplying the second bit by the number times 2. It's the same thing as when you count up the number of zeros when you're multiplying two numbers by each other. To figure out where the new result should go, like elementary school multiplication. Anyway, now I think the sun's rising. Anyway, so let's talk about the last challenge, because we know that multiplying binary numbers by 1 or 0 is so simple because we're multiplying by bits rather than digits. We now know that it's going to be how exactly are we going to take our A input and we're going to split it up into individual bits? This is where the tricky part comes in. We're going to use bit shifting again in order to shift our number into underflow. Now, underflow is basically just when you shift to the right, so like shift beyond, so this is my least significant bit, right? If I was to shift to the right of it, then I would start to have problems, if you know what I mean, because there is no bit that represents 1/2, because we're not doing this in fractions. So whenever you have a number like this and you shift it to the right, then you get what's called shift underflow. And if you have a bit like this and you shift it to the left, then that's going to be considered shift overflow. And the really convenient thing is that, that wrong sign, if we look at this, we actually have branching conditions that say, hey, if we just did a shift left instruction or shift right instruction and we had a 1 here, then that tells us that it went to this 1/2 thing. So using that, if we take our B input, if we can really easily say that, like, if our least significant bit got shifted down, if it was a 1, then we can do 1 bit of code, and if it was off, then we could do another bit of code. What's that called? An if-then-else statement. So, in other words, we could just go bit by bit, and we could say we're going to shift this to the left now, and if it's on, then we're going to take our A input and we're going to add it onto the output that we're going to eventually give. And if there wasn't one on, then that's really simple because we don't need to add anything because we're multiplying it by 0 for that bit. And if we keep going, if we keep shifting to the right, then if I'm multiplying something by 2, after one shift to the right, it's going to be down here. So if we just shift our other input to the left, and we keep on doing that once each time, then we can go through this and really quickly solve a problem like this. Now, one quick thing to note, because of the way that multiplication works, you can only use a total number of, because our output is so small, you can only use a total number of 8 bits in both your A inputs. So if I had like 5, then I couldn't multiply it by anything that had one of these levers involved in it in order to get my output to be 8 bits, because the length of the new output is equal to the length of the first output times the plus the length of the second output. That's just like a general rule. Also, if I had like 4, then I couldn't have that one on, I would have to have that. And if I had that on, then I could only have, I couldn't have any of these. Just make sure that the length of your A input and your B input adds up to 8, otherwise the result's not going to be able to be displayed on here. Anyway, that's enough rambling. Let's start getting into programming. Alright, let's go ahead and start declaring some variables, shall we? So let's go ahead by just starting by moving from where register 0 is pointing to register 0. We've seen this done several times before, so let's go ahead and just make a pointer then. So we're going to need to put it on that address. And now, go ahead, come over here, and turn this on. Oh dear, and turn that on too. We should see this has probably already done the operation, so we should see it register 0, hopefully. Yep, we've got a pointer pointing to this address. So now let's go ahead and add in another one of those. So let's just see, exact same instruction, move from where register is, in this case we should say where register 1 is pointing to register 1. And then we can just go back and press the button. And if we come back over here, we should see that this piston retracts as well. Excellent, so everything is going just as we want it to so far. So now we need to make sure that our 2 inputs are pointing at separate memory addresses. So we're going to go ahead and, what's it called, just come to this next instruction. And let's just increment register 1. Oh, and I should probably say this now because I've been skipping over this area in here a lot recently for whatever reason, but this button right here is actually also a clock tick, so it should also work. So if we come in here, we should see that register 1 gets incremented. Oh, or decremented, because that's what I usually do. I'm just so used to automatically putting a torch there that, yeah, that can be problematic here. We don't want you at all. Okay. So, Ignore the fact that this was decremented instead of incremented. We now have 2 pointers, both of which, or rather, one of them is pointing at this address, and one of them is pointing at this address. Now, right now, it may be really, really, really weird to use pointers to do this instead of the actual registers, because they are literally not going to do anything, or rather these pointers are literally not going to do anything but point this entire time. They're not going to change or anything like we've done on previous programs. That said, we're still going to want to point them into memory. Now, it's not going to be very clear why we're going to do this for the moment, but very soon we're going to find out why doing stuff like this can actually be really useful as opposed to just storing the information in our registers. Like, that's just a really good habit to get into. Don't store data information in your registers, try to store pointer information. Among other things, also because they're just as fast as each other. Anyway, I'm getting off track, so now we've got 2 registers. But the next thing we need to do is we're going to need to get some inputs into these registers. We're going to need to actually put stuff into these. First of all, we should probably actually turn this thing on and off to reset the registers after my little derp. I don't need to reset the memory because nothing's been sent in there, as a matter of fact, but we can do that, and then we can do that. Come in here, and this should retract. Yep, and if we come back here, again, these buttons over here work just as fine. In fact, if you press one of these buttons, you can actually get a bit of delay. So if you're like actually debugging the circuitry, which is what I originally built all this for, it's a really useful thing to do. But for our purposes, we don't really need that because this computer has no bugs that I know of at this point. Anyway, so now we can see that that worked. Excellent. So now we should just see that one get incremented instead of decremented this time. And retract, please. Yep. And now that is pointing at 2 separate things. So now let's go ahead and get some inputs into these 2 memory addresses, M0 and M1. So let's go ahead and come in here. Now the way we're going to do this is we're going to go ahead and just make an actual pointer that's going to point to the I/O. Now if you remember from the first program we did ever, the way that you get a pointer that points to the input-output system of this computer is you just get a pointer that has these 2 bits up here that are both 1. One really simple way to do this is to just decrement 0. It will give you -1 in 2's complement, which is just all 1s. So that's a really shortcut, and we don't have to do anything with ROM. So now if we press this button, we should see that if we come back to our register 2, because I said decrement register 2, these should all turn on. Yep. And now because both of these are on, the rest don't matter, and it's just going to point to the input-output system. So now let's go ahead and just use a few move commands to get them, or rather inputs from the input-output into M0 and M1. So let's come in here. There's our last line. I really wish there was an easier way to mark off your last line. Here we go. So move from register 2 is pointing to where register 0 is pointing, and then move from where register 1 is, or register 2 is pointing, to where register 1 is pointing. Okay, that should be everything. So let's just go ahead and press the 2 buttons. Now here it's actually probably going to be good for us to use the button out here because we're going to be using the input-output system now. So we're going to press this button and we should get a light pop up here that tells us, hey, we need an input, right? Yay, okay. So the next question for us, and this is something you should definitely know when you're programming this, and that is which inputs go where. So the A and B inputs on this input pad correspond directly with the A and B inputs that we have in our computer, right? Now, the problem is that in our computer, there's no C place, or rather, yeah, there's no C place to solve to in our instruction set, right? So that's why we have to do, for addition, A equals A plus B instead of C equals A plus B, right? So that means that, which input is this asking us for, I guess, is the simpler question. Now, I've actually added some lights on here so that it's simpler to understand, but if you don't want to come over here every time, as a general rule, if it's only asking you for one input, it's going to be asking you for the B input. And the reason for this is that in a move instruction specifically, it is move from B to A for our format. And that's just the way that this computer is set up at a low level, so that's the way we're going to have to work with it. You should never get a situation where you're only asking for an A input. It should be B or A and B. And I know it might be a bit of a misnomer to say input have input B be the one that you regularly use, but for internal purposes in the computer, again, it's the B input. So with that out of the way, let's go ahead and put something into the B input, like a 5 or something. So now let's just submit inputs, and if we come in to our computer and look at this first one, oh, there's a 5 in there, awesome! So let's go ahead and, what should we put in here next? How about like a 4 or something, and then we can just say, next instruction, we should get a fancy light again pop up. It's telling us that we need an input. Yep, so let's go ahead and press the submit input button, and if we go into our memory over here, M sub 1 is in fact 4, so we have our 5 and our 4 inputted. Awesome. So now we have 2 inputs done. The next thing that we're going to want to do is we're going to want to set up branching instructions. So, or rather a branching register. Well, we have one branching, or rather one register left in general. So let's just go ahead and take this register and say, okay, this register is going to be our branching, what's it called, register. So let's see. The first thing we should do is we should increment it. And because, let's see, let's come in here. So these are the 2 move instructions that have got us the 5 and 3 in there. So let's go ahead and increment register 3, and I should get rid of this rain. I know I live in Seattle, but still, it's lagging my game. Anyway, so let's go ahead, increment register 3. So now that means that register 3, we should get an increment instruction, and because we've only used memories or ROM 0 so far, we shouldn't have to increment it again to get the next ROM address. So let's go into ROM 1, and this is where we're going to put our, what's it called? Oh, what is it called? The thing that the branching instruction. Okay. Now, here is where things get weird, and boy do I mean weird, because this is where stuff gets messy. So as we can see, we've added 1. But the thing is that, first of all, in this program, we're not just going to be using a if one branching instruction like we've done previously. Like, we're not just going to put something onto a stack over and over again, or we're not just going to, what was the other program? Actually, I think, yeah, we've only done the stack, so that's in that one we were literally just going through a stack over and over again, and we weren't doing anything, really. But in this program, we don't just have an infinite loop going on. as you remember from the start of the video, we're going to actually need to use an if-then-else statement. And I'm sorry if I'm running around, but me moving IRL and in-game and just watching stuff move helps me to think, so yeah. Anyway, back on topic. Where was I? Oh yes, so because we're using both an if-then-else statement and we're also using a loop, that means that we're going to need two addresses that we're going to branch to. And the problem is that we only have 4 registers. So what we're going to need to do is we're actually going to end up using 2 registers to solve all of our branching instructions. Right, so this may sound weird, but what we're going to do is we're going to have this address right here, which is going to be pointing to an address in ROM, which contains the address that we're going to branch to. And using this, we can say increment or decrement it to get the correct, just get the correct loop or if-then-else statement that we need to out of memory, just by using this input here. Like if we wanted to get, say, the if-then-else statement, this would have to be 1, and then we would move from where this register is pointing to this register, and then we would have the address to branch to in this register. But if we wanted to do the loop, then we would increment this, move from where this register is pointing to this register, and then decrement it again so it's still pointing at 1. And that is how we're going to do stuff. Now the problem with this is that if we come back to our stuff back here, now we're not going to be able to just have 2 easy registers that are going to always point to our, We're not just going to have 2 easy registers that 100% of the time are going to point to our A and B inputs. Because we're also going to need 2 separate things. Number 1, we are going to need to have something to stop our loop, because unlike before, when we're multiplying 2 numbers by each other, we can't just go through this the problem infinitely. Past a certain point, we're going to have an answer for multiplying 2 numbers. And after we've gone through 8 times, we should break out of our loop. We can't just do a infinite loop in this. Again, it's just not going to work. So that's the next challenge that we're going to have to face. And the way that we're going to have that is we're going to have a separate variable in our memory that's going to be dedicated to that. And then the other thing is we need to have a place to store our inputs, because we're going to need to at least have modifications of our original 2 inputs at all times, because we need to keep on shifting one of them to the right to keep seeing if there's shift underflow, and keep shifting the other to the left to, just add up all of the zeros. Add on all of the zeros to the problem. So yeah, that means that we are going to need to have a total of 4 registers, or 4 memory addresses that we're going to be able to address with just 2 register locations. So this is what I was talking about earlier when I was saying, hey, this is why we're going to want to try to use pointers for this. Instead of just going in and saying, oh, I'm just going to use my registers, because all that information cannot fit in our registers. Because of, it all started with the fact that we're not just using a while loop, but we're also using a, if-then-else statement in the same program. So, there's other stuff, though, that we're going to get to very soon in this series that's going to also require us to have stuff in memory. But, yeah, that is way enough rambling and explaining stuff for now, though. Let's get back to coding, shall we? So if you remember, there's 2 more things that we're going to need at this point. First of all, though, we should probably just go ahead. Actually, do we really need to come in here and Yeah, we need to increment that. So now we have that register, and that's pointing at, what's it called? So now this one is going to be pointing out where we're going to be, where if then else statement is going to be. But there's another constraint. I know. I'm sorry, but this is actually what I was doing back in January. I was trying to program this into the computer and making sure that A, the hardware didn't have any bugs, which it turned out it had a few, and B, figuring out how to make it most efficiently. And that's what we're going over today. And the problem is that this is going to take up almost all of our program memory. I know, like, if it looks insane over there, but this program for just multiplication is just going to be so complicated for this basic computer that it's going to take up all of that memory. Really unfortunate. Again, if we had something like a C input, then stuff would be a lot simpler. But we're just working on 8-bit stuff right now. Someday I'm going to do a 16-bit, though. I can promise you that. Anyway, again, back on track. So we're not actually going to move our pointer in yet, because we can do that at the start of the loop. Because, say, like, we've just branched from the end of the loop, we can just say, okay, so now that we have the branching instruction done, we can just move from where this register is pointing into this register, and you don't have to do it once when you're declaring stuff and once at the end of the program. So yeah, we're just optimizing stuff like that. Just know that it's not optimal if we declare that right now. But in the meantime, we can go ahead and declare some more variables. So the next thing we're going to do is we are going to make a third variable. This is the variable that is going to make sure that we don't go through more than 8 times, and that is just, we're going to have 1 bit in here, and we're just going to keep on shifting it to the left until it shift overflows, and when it shift overflows, we're going to say, okay, program done, break out of the end loop. So how do we do this? Well, let's just get a pointer pointing to memory 2 address, which we can just get by incrementing register 1, which is pointing at register or memory 1 right now, or 2 right now. Sorry about that, got briefly interrupted anyway. So we were just talking about how we need to have a register that stores the number of times through the loop that we're going to go through, so that we only go through the loops 8 times. And the reason we want to do 8 times is that if there's any more than that, then it's opening up the potential to, well, first of all, no matter how big either number is, if you have 8 bits, then all of the time it's going to, what's it called? If you have only 8 bits, then because we're going to be shifting the bits to the left and to the right, by the 8th iteration, the entire, what's it called? All of the information in these should have been shifted out, so that means that we can't use them anyway. So, in other words, if we were to do more than 8, then that would be allowing us to do calculations that we can't display anyway, so we're just going to limit it at 8 to keep it as fast as possible while keeping it 100% functional. So what we're going to do for this is we're just going to declare a variable, and the way we're going to do that is, I believe we're just going to move from where register 1 is pointing to register 2. And the reason that we're actually going to do this instead of like getting a new variable, or rather getting a new pointer pointing to memory and then incrementing it twice, is that if we do this, we can just automatically get that value into that register. in one instruction. Like, this is just going to turn into the value that's in register 1, this guy right here, in any second now, assuming I pressed the button. Oh, never mind, actually, okay, that's my bad. So, prior to recording this, I actually messed up, and basically, I went through and, I did this instruction anyway, but, then I got well, not rudely interrupted, but, I got interrupted again, like, right after I started recording again, so I decided that might as well just start the entire thing over. And I forgot to reset the program counter to where we were previously, so I just made us do the next instruction, which is blank. So this time when we press it, we should see the, because I just reset the program counter so that it's pointing at the correct address. And this time, okay. Oh no, I used where that address is pointing to, which is this, and that's 4. Okay, so I should not have done a pointer. So we shouldn't do where register 4 is pointing to. We should just do register 2 to register 2. And this is just going to move that in one instruction, and then we can increment register 2, and, or rather, is it, yeah, it's, what's it called, number 2. Anyway, we want to restart this because that was my bad, that register should not be 4. Again, always good to look through stuff like this because it will let you find stuff like that. Anyway, so let's do, we were going to do 4 times 5, so let's go ahead and do that. So let's just turn this on. Well, darn, my computer's fan is on. That is really unfortunate, because now you're just listening, oh boy, oops. I've really tried to get to, reduce my computer's fan because it's really annoying background noise. So like I had, the actual fan in my room going on, just trying to get rid of the stupid fan, but it looks like that's not doing what I need it to do. That's really unfortunate, because having the fan on is really annoying. We're having a heat wave here in Seattle right now, and I'm not happy about it. I always complain about hot weather way too much. Anyway, what is going on with this computer? Didn't I turn you on? Yeah, I did. Oh no, I have it on debug mode. That explains a bit. Okay. And we should keep it on debug mode, you know? So we can turn this on. No clip so I can get through the wall. Press the button. And now we should see getting a pointer pointing to memory 0. Yep. And we're going to get a pointer pointing to memory 1 with this next one, I believe. And then we're going to increment that one. That should turn on, yep. So now this should turn on after that. So let's just increment. And please turn on. Yep. And now we can decrement register 2 so that we have a pointer pointing at the input-output system. All of these should be tracked. Yep. And now we should be able to move directly from the input-output system into these guys, which I didn't reset at the end of the last one, but it's okay. So let's just start with 5, which is what we're supposed to do. So 5, submit instruction. We should get a little pop-up light asking us for something. Yep, and then we can just say submit input, and now we should have 5 in our first register, and my Minecraft just crashed. So there's that. Anyway, we see the 5 is now loaded in here. That is absolutely what we want to see. Let's go into NoClip. So let's go to the next one. Should get another indication. This time we want to input a 4 because those are the numbers we're using. 5 times 4 equals 20, by the way. That should be our end result. So let's just submit that, and now we should have the 4 in memory 1 getting replaced with another 4. Yep, nothing has changed. Just the clear sign that something's happened. Okay, anyway, so after this, I think this is where we're going to go ahead and get our memory pointer pointing to register, or yeah, this is where we increment this register so that it's pointing to that address. And then I'm not sure if we move it in or not. So let's just use this fancy dancy lever. And let's see, next instruction is move from where register 2 is pointing to where register 1 is pointing. No, just move from register 1 to register 2, which is the instruction that we're using to, well, it's the instruction that we're using to get this information from this register into this register. And that is the register pointing to the variable we're going to use, that we've been talking about all this time, to make sure that we only go through this 8 times. So now that I think of it, it might actually be more efficient and simpler if we don't actually do this move instruction and just end up incrementing register 1 and using that to point to the address that stores the loop counter. And the reason for that is that I'm pretty sure I'm going to use register 2 as the place to store the address to branch to, which we get from this register right here. So let's go ahead and do that, shall we? So we're going to come in here, and we're going to go to this address. And maybe I should have kept the lever on so I could find the address easily. Doesn't really matter. Are we into... Yes, this is undeveloped. Aha, I think this is... No, this isn't our last one. So what is this? What is this doing? This is increment register. Oh no, that's incrementing register 2 so that it becomes pointing at where we want to have the next address. But we're going to move that back to here so that we're just going to use register 1 to do that instead of register 2. So let's just do that. And then we can actually increment where register 1 is pointing, so that we get that 1 in memory slot 3. So let's go ahead and press the button. So let's come in here, and now this address should get incremented. Yep. Now the reason that also using this register, we can access both register, what's it called? Yeah, registers or memory 0 and 1, because it's just pointing to that area in memory. And we're going to want to keep this pointer right here, pointing at that address where the, what's it called, is... Oh, what is it called? Oh, actually, change of... Nah, we can actually do it the other way around. So this is going to be the register that, this one right here, this is going to be the register that stores the operand that we're using right now. For example, if we want to shift one of our, either our A or B input, this is the memory slot we're going to use, and then this is also the one we're going to be using to find the the address that we're going to branch, or no, the branching condition of whether or not the increment thing gets carry overflow. I'm sorry if I'm getting a bit into, or if I'm starting to get a bit confusing. And then this register right here is the register that we're going to just constantly have pointing at our output, because or rather our C location in memory, which is going to be the last variable we're going to assign today. I actually think that I'm going to stop this video after we're done assigning variables. So yeah. Anyway, so now that we've done that, we can increment this, and now that should increment register or memory 3, so this one right here, this should turn on. Yep. So now we finally have that loop counter after all that. And then the last variable we want to do today is we want to have a place where we're going to store our output. So this is our A input, this is our B input, and we're going to use memory 4 to store our output. So the way we're going to do this is we're just, first of all, we're going to use another move instruction. If we can find the last instruction here, I think we've passed it. This is so annoying. Is this increment register 1? Yes. Or where it's pointing? Yes, it is. So now after here, we're going to start by moving from register 1 to register 0. And that should be everything we're doing there, because now, because register 1 is pointing at memory 3 and register 0 is pointing at, is now pointing at memory 3, if we just increment register 0, then register 0 should now be pointing at memory 4. So now that we have that pointing at memory 4, that's all of our variables. All we need to have in that register is we just need to have it pointing at memory 4. We don't need to have it doing anything else. But that's all of our variables declared. So yeah, like I said, that's going to be the end of this video, partially because this is starting to become really long. Like, this is already longer than one of my normal videos, so let's just make sure that those last instructions work. So we should see register 1 now be at about the same value as register, or register 0 now be at the same value as register 1, which it is, and then we can do the next instruction. That should increment it again so that we're pointing at memory 4 or 3. So now it should be pointing at memory 3, so this bit should turn on. Yes, everything is working. Alright, so that's going to be everything for today. Sorry if you didn't follow along. Next video is probably going to be the really meaty part of this video, or rather this program, because it's where we're actually going to do the multiplication. Today we were just declaring some variables. So yeah, I'm going to review which variables we have and why we have them, hopefully better than I maybe was able to explain them in this video next time. But until then, I hope you guys have enjoyed, and I'll see you guys then.